Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the third installation of It Takes a Village. In the chat, if you could just drop your name, information about where you're at, and how you heard about this event. As a heads up for our computer raffle today, that raffle is for students or their adult family members. I'm going to drop in the chat a sign-in form. You have to sign in on the form. That's where we're going to be pulling names for the raffle. We're going to get started in about 3 minutes. So again, in the chat, we'd love to hear your name, where you're calling in from, what interested you in this event. And then we will be pulling names for our raffle from the sign-in. So make sure that you complete the sign-in for youth or for the adult in the household.
Rachel, sorry. Can we also, everybody who's ever entered, please let us know how you learned about this event as well.
Welcome, everybody. Congrats. Someone had their son accepted to school. Congrats to you. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're about to jump things off in about 2, 3 minutes. Welcome, everybody. We're so happy that you joined us. Thank you for telling us about the young people in your households. Thank you for telling us about where you heard about this event. Shout out to the Ellis Trust for promoting our event. We love the Ellis Trust. Yep. We love the Ellis Trust. Please do fill out that sign-in form. Okay, so just again, welcome to everybody who's here. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you supporting the young people in your household, or if you're a young person, we really appreciate you advocating for yourself, coming to this event. In a moment, I'm going to drop the sign-in form. Couple of quick announcements about the raffle that we will be holding at the end of this event. So, first of all, the raffle winner must be someone who can pick up the laptop computer in Philadelphia. So if you're dialing in from Texas, representing Texas, we love you. Thank you for joining us, for educating yourself. But unfortunately, we need anyone who wins that raffle to be able to pick up the computer in Philadelphia. And so we'll make those arrangements. Secondly, the names for the raffle will be pulled from the sign-in form. So you will need to fill out the form before our breakout groups in order to be entered into the raffle. Third, the raffle will take place at the end of the event, so please do stay on in order to be entered into the raffle. And last, if you are someone who works with youth, and supports youth and college access. We love you. We appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. But it is youth and their families that are entered into the raffle. Unless any of my co-hosts have anything else to add, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Madeline, who's going to jump us off with some FAFSA fast facts.
Thanks, Rachel. Well, I'm so happy you're all here tonight. Especially shout out to the students because you put in a long day I almost said at work, at school, and you're here tonight. I love seeing so many students in the comments, and shout out to the parents and other adult supporters. My name is Madeline Berkner. I work at the Philadelphia Education Fund. I've actually worked here for 11 years. And before I became the manager of persistence, I actually spent the first 7 years of my career at the Ed Fund working in a Philly public high school. I worked up at Alani High School, and I helped hundreds of students fill out the FAFSA, apply to college, and actually fund their college educations. So what I've put together tonight is really accumulation of that 11 years of knowledge, plus the years I spent in college admissions before that. With that said, they've only given me 10 minutes. I'm going to talk fast. It's going to be high level. If this generates a question for you, that's great. I'm trying to kick up the dust here. Know that we have an excellent panel of experts who will be here to answer questions a little bit more in depth. And we have that breakout session at the end. So if you have a particular weird situation and you want to bounce it off somebody, there's time and space for that. For now, I'm going to breeze through these simple facts about FAFSA. And we're starting with FAFSA because it is the one form to rule them all. What exactly is it? If you're a high school student, hopefully your school has said FAFSA, FAFSA, FAFSA from the time you were in ninth grade on, but really you don't fill out that FAFSA until you are poised to go enroll in school. So if you are a junior, pause, right? If you're a sophomore, pause. The FAFSA is a form that helps you fund your education for the next upcoming school year. It's a free application. It's an online form, and it's hosted by the federal government at studentaid.gov. Right now, that's under the U.S. Department of Education, right? So this is an online electronic form that you would fill out for free. And what it does is it is a way of you raising your hand and saying, I want financial aid, and I want to know what I'm entitled to, and I want to know what I could get from various schools on my list. This is the one form that kicks off the whole process of financial aid. More than 10 million students a year fill out a FAFSA, and it's a form for people who live all across the United States, in the U.S. territories, in Puerto Rico, right? And it enables students to access more than $100 billion a year in financial aid. So it's really important, right? FAFSA also can help cover more than just college. I used to hear students say, I don't need to fill out a FAFSA, I'm going to trade school. And I would say, whoa, 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 hold on. Did you know a lot of accredited trade programs also require a FAFSA? If they have a cost associated with them and they're accredited, they're a certain program length, chances are you can fill out a FAFSA, and some of the money that you might receive as a result of doing your FAFSA could be used to enroll at a place like Lincoln Tech or Penco Tech. Not every single trade program is sort of FAFSA eligible, but many of them are, and it's worth asking. We don't want to just think FAFSA equals four-year college. It can also be used for two-year colleges. So tonight we have a representative from CCP's financial aid office, and she is dealing with FAFSAs day in and day out, right? All of my students who go to CCP, we make sure that FAFSA is on file. It's a really critical part of funding a two-year college education, as well as four-year colleges, four-year universities, and trade and tech colleges. So these are just a few examples. This is by no means exhaustive. I just wanted to throw a couple names out there so you had a sense of the different categories of school that might you would use your FAFSA to help afford those places. So next, how does the FAFSA actually work, right? It's this form, but what does it do? Does magic occur? No, this is pretty simple stuff. The FAFSA is student-centric. That's the important thing to know. Even if you're a parent here tonight, it really starts with your student. So I would encourage the student to go ahead and go to studentaid.gov and set up their student account. It's called the FSA ID, or Federal Student Aid ID. So the student is going to start that FAFSA, and the student will work through the form. It'll ask questions about the student's bio, where do they go to school, the student's income, which for many 17, 18-year-olds, it might be negligible or maybe zero. The important thing is that there's a question about financials, and you got to click this big approve button. It's a way to import securely the student's financial record with the IRS, if there is one, into the form. Then the student will be asked a series of questions to determine whether they are dependent on a parent or not. And if the student answers those questions in a way that indicates that they are dependent on a parent, there will be a portion where the parent's email contact will be entered, and then the parent will have to answer some question about the household income as well. As I mentioned, FAFSA is absolutely our first step, right? It opens the door to these federal grants that are out there. You might have heard of something called a Pell Grant. We love a Pell Grant. A federal loan, which is offered, but you're not obligated to take it out. No one can force you to borrow without your consent, as well as federal work study. I also want to highlight that there is money available for Pennsylvania students, especially if they're staying in Pennsylvania. And that money flows through an agency called FEA. You'll see that up here, PA Higher Education Assistance Agency. FEA is the agency that awards our PA state grant, and we do not want to sleep on that money. It is a significant pot of money, but a student has to have the FAFSA on file first before they can even raise their hand and say, I'd like some of this state money too. A FAFSA is also usually the first step to getting institutional grants and scholarships. That means money that comes directly from the school itself, right? Like a Drexel University scholarship. You need to fill out your FAFSA as a first step. And then also private scholarships. So my organization, the Philadelphia Education Fund, has the largest non-university scholarship in the city. We only award it to the students who go to our college access schools. But if you want some of our money, you have to prove to us that you did your FAFSA first. So if you take away one thing from this presentation, is that FAFSA really is that first domino that's going to kick off this process. And then what happens is you submit that FAFSA and your FEA. And then there's another form. I'm just going to do a tiny plug. If you're going to some private schools that are extremely expensive, places like Drexel, Swarthmore, Villanova, they might have a third form that's required called a CSS. But you submit all of your financial aid forms. You indicate the schools you're interested in. You do not need to have complete applications at the time you do a FAFSA. You just have to be fairly certain you're going to apply. You list those schools, and then if you are admitted down the road, those schools will prepare individual personalized aid award letters that actually might show up in your inbox. I know places like CCP, they're not sending that paper letter, but most colleges are still sending a letter that's showing all the forms of financial aid you're getting for that particular school. The different forms of financial aid that you might be eligible for include grants, which is our favorite kind, right? That's free money you don't have to pay back. Loans, which is borrowed money that you pay back with interest. And then this other bucket called self-help, which sounds kind of funny. How can the government give you self-help money? That takes the form of a federal work study job where money flows from the US government to your school. And if you're working a work study job, you can earn a certain amount of money that gets paid out to you to help pay for school expenses. My next slide shows about parents. So I kind of alluded to this earlier. The form is student-centric, but if it only took into account the student's own personal ability to pay, colleges would have no revenue stream, right? Most 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds don't have nearly enough money to pay for college. And instead, the student's financial aid offer would be based on the household income, right? So indicating your parents' income and who you're actually dependent on is a really important part of FAFSA. I want to be clear, FAFSA only cares about parents. If you live with your grandma, grandma does not go on a FAFSA unless she adopted you legally, in which case she's your parent, right? So this is a little bit the trickier stuff, and we'll talk about some of these situations with our panelists, but unless a student has one of these situations over here, chances are that they are dependent on a parent and have to involve those legal parents. And this is that part I mentioned earlier. It's gotten so much simpler with the new FAFSA. You just need that parent's email address, and then they'll go through and complete their component of the FAFSA. The next big kind of question or myth about FAFSA is that it's a scholarship program, and that's not true. It's a financial aid entitlement platform in some ways. So grades matter, but they matter more when you're a returning student. The first time a student fills out FAFSA as a brand new student, you pretty much just need proof of high school graduation. Your GPA could be a 1.0, and if a school admitted you and you enroll there, you could qualify for aid from the US government or from that school to help pay, right? But in order to keep those federal monies flowing into your account, you do have to meet some standards. And each college has standards that they have to impose. In general, they are that you have to pass 2/3 of the credits that you enroll in, and you usually have to earn a minimum GPA. And that might be a little different school to school, or if you're a freshman or a sophomore. I tell my students, think of a 2.0 as kind of the floor. You need to have above a 2.0 for that money to keep flowing to your account. All right, my last slide. This might have sounded like a lot. You're probably here because FAFSA feels stressful. So how do you make it a little easier on yourself? Honestly, FAFSA has become so much more simplified since I first started helping students 11 years ago. But there's a few things that are like tried and true tools that I think never go out of style. A paper calendar where you're writing down all of your deadlines and to-do lists and posting it in a public place in your home so everybody's aware of what you're going through, right? And when things are due. We love a Google Sheet, right? We love a Google Doc. If you're a Heights student, I'm sure that they have given you many templates that you can use as different trackers, but it's up to you to fill those out. And then eventually you're going to start receiving some paper mail. There's a lot of electronic stuff. So, good email hygiene is important. But I honestly love like a paper filing system so that you can just, quickly sock away all the things you're receiving in the mail. And definitely for me, I say write down your passwords. You could put it in your phone or have the browser save it, but there will come a point where you wish you wrote it down. Okay. So when it comes time to fill out the FAFSA, to me, this is like the ideal scenario for a student who's dependent on a parent, is that you're sitting in front of a laptop. To me, FAFSA is laptop activity, right? There is a browser version, but I like a laptop. I want the full keyboard. I don't want autocorrect involved. Have those phones out so you get your codes. And you might not need the IRS tax return, but it never hurts to just have it nearby in case you feel stuck. And if you're filling out a FAFSA for the 26-27 school year, you actually would be consulting the tax return from 2024. Okay? So that's pretty much it for me. We have a lot of helpers here tonight. Maybe you're already connected to one of these organizations. And I want to encourage you all to visit Philly Goes to College website because there's also a whole college prep directory on the website. And hopefully I don't click out any links. I think that's my last slide. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to invite two students that we have who are here with us tonight, two current college students, to share their kind of perspective on doing FAFSA or why FAFSA is important, or how FAFSA has made a difference for them in affording college. So we'll start with Sarah.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm a community education student at Temple. I'm a senior. And I have a piece of advice that I think parents and guardians of students applying for the FAFSA should absolutely know. This is something that I struggle with a lot in my time at college, and that is doing your taxes. So I had 2 years where my parents did their taxes and 2 years where they did not. And there was a noticeable difference, not only in the amount of stress and time that it took me to apply for them, the amount of money that I got. It was a large difference in dealing with the FAFSA with and without your taxes. You know, in those fast facts you heard at the very beginning that there is a little button that you can approve to get the IRS to pre-fill your financial information into the FAFSA, but that only happens if you have done your taxes for that year. If you have not, then your 18-year-old student is going to have to take a look at your W-2 and flounder with putting in those numbers individually themselves and maybe get some of them wrong, like I'm sure I might have in my time doing it myself. I got genuinely thousands more dollars when it was a pre-filled out thing rather than doing it myself. Not just because I was doing it myself, but also because it took a lot longer and I maybe missed some of those early deadlines because I was having to take the time and effort to sit down and figure it all out. So that is my one piece of advice. Please file your taxes and make it all a lot easier on your student.
I love that. A paper trail is so important. And that's why we love an accordion folder, right? Keep those taxes in a nice accordion folder. Let's pass it over to Alexa from the street team.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. I'm also a senior at Temple University. I'm a social work major, and I have filed at FAFSA every year, of course, and it will get easier after the first initial one. Definitely, because then everything is in there, and again, it goes way faster. The first one definitely takes the most time and can be stressful, but like Madeline said earlier, when you have everything prepped out and are like intentionally sitting down and saying, okay, I need to do FAFSA before this deadline, it's definitely easier. One kind of just tidbit insight to me with the FAFSA was it was definitely very helpful applying and getting the work study, because then I was able to, when I had the time, freshman year might not be the time for you, to search out for a work study job on my campus that would pay me. And I at least know that the allotted amount they gave me would be at least the minimum of what I'd be getting that semester. So that was definitely nice. And this is a very like specific niche piece of advice, but when you eventually get into college and eventually select the aid and everything, and let me know if I don't know if it's too detailed, but you have to make sure to be careful and maybe talk over with a parent or guardian how much you want to choose from it, because again, like she said, you don't need to choose the full amount. You might not need, or you might need to do the whole thing, and you need to make sure that you're doing it's the whole entire thing and it's not just first semester, if that makes sense. So you just need to make sure to look at the numbers, look at what it's actually asking you of how much you want to take out of it. And then so like, yeah, I was gonna say through your individual colleges, because I've had to do this too, where I have to go speak to a financial aid office more individually, one-on-one, based off of what I got, because of course 2 years ago your circumstances might have changed to maybe now. So making sure during that first week to consistently try to get in and talking with the financial aid office to help you further with those more specific situations.
I love that. There are so many kernels of wisdom there. And I really like the assurance that it does get easier. You notice that all of us who are professionals just nodded in unison, right? When we heard you say it gets easier, because it's true. Your first time feels like maybe this big scary thing, but if you work through it little by little and I liked your phrase prepped out, right? Then by year two, it really just feels like you're kind of going through the motions again. So with that, I'd like to welcome our panelists up. So I think we're going to spotlight us. And so I'll start with Chris to do some intros. So if you could tell us your name, your organizational affiliation, what role you have, and then if you have a nice little succinct answer to what do you love about college access work or working with students in general. So we'll start with Chris.
Wonderful. My name is Chris Robinson. I work with the School District of Philadelphia in the Office of Post-Secondary Readiness, and my role is as a program coordinator in college and career readiness. What I love the most about this work is the personal statement and the college program research process. So with the personal statement, I end up hearing some of the most intense, deep circumstances in a child's life. And that is what I use to build trust upon them to have these conversations about finances and other home circumstances that might be a little uncomfortable. And then related to that, picking through a program helps them really connect the academic portion of what they're planning on doing to the career plan of what they'd like to do.
Love that. Let's ping over to Christina.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Christina Boateng, and I work with Heights Philadelphia as a college access and equity coordinator at George Washington High School. The question is, what do I love about access work? College access. I think for me, just like the resources that we share, especially laying down these days, like I'm working with high school students, and most of the time it's like, I don't know, right? I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, right? And when you share that resource with them, and you see them moving through it, going through it, exploring themselves, and finding out what options are for them when it comes to applying for FAFSA, doing your personal essays, doing college research, right? Those little exposures and teach them tips how to prepare for that, and seeing them shine from there is just my best part for me.
We love that. We'll go over to Latoya next.
Hi, good evening and welcome everyone. My name is Latoya Wingfield. I am the Vice President of Administration, Finance, and Operations with the Philadelphia Education Fund. And what I love about College Access, hi Madeline, that's my colleague, is threefold. The first is that I have really enjoyed being a part of young people's journey of discovery. And academia is the way that they tend to find themselves and their purpose. Second, I am a resident of North Philadelphia, born and raised. So I have been blessed to be able to help people who look like me, come from similar circumstances, achieve, their dreams, networks, explore opportunities that they would not have. Without pursuing higher education. And third, I'm competitive, right? And so, I have found so much joy in helping students win scholarships, get full rides to colleges and universities, to really get accepted to those schools they shot for the moon to get into. So all of those things have really been my pleasure and actually a blessing for me to be able to be a part of those young people's journeys.
I love that. I'm competitive. I think all of us are maybe a little bit.
But
Maybe it
nobody
doesn't.
admits it, right?
I used to. I wanted to see Alani get the most scholarship money every year. I'm
That's
fully
right.
cut from the same cloth as you, Latoya.
Yes.
All right, let's finish with Becky. Do you want to intro again your full name, organizational affiliation, role or title, and then why do you love doing what you do?
Hello, everybody. My name is Becky Commons. I work for Community College of Philadelphia. I specifically work for the Cato Scholarship at Community College of Philadelphia. I am the manager of aid and eligibility, which is a fancy way of saying I handle all of the financial aid and everybody's eligibility for the scholarship each year. I would say, I feel like similar to what everybody else is saying, my favorite part about college access work is I actually have this in my office where I like to turn the uncertainty into an opportunity. It's really great. I meet with a lot of students and families pretty much on the daily, and being able to help them navigate these systems that weren't necessarily made for their situations or made with them in mind, and then making sure that they can see that there are pathways, there are, ways that they can get what they want. Being a part of that just makes, honestly, the whole thing worth it. So yeah. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, we only have three questions tonight, but we hope that they're a jumping off point to what will go on in the breakout room. So please start generating questions as you're listening tonight. So for my first question, I'm going to start with pitching this one to Becky and Christina. So I did a little brief overview about kind of prepping or setting the stage for FAFSA. But in particular, Christina, you mentioned helping your students with the process of research, right? And helping them kind of become smart consumers. So what is some of that information that they would want to have in advance of doing a FAFSA? And then Becky, you can weigh in after Christina.
Yeah. So with the FAFSA process, we're starting off with, first of all, the right website, right? Because of course unfortunately there are situations where they find websites, but you have to pay to do the FAFSA application. That's a big no-no, right? We want to make sure that it's the standard.gov link, I think that's as long as it says .gov on it for FAFSA, that's the correct link for it. With that being said, of course, getting the paperwork such as their social security card, if they have one, of course, the birthday's address, and then also, if possible, like how you mentioned earlier, the parents' tax information. A lot of the challenges that I've seen so far with the kiddos is just that sometimes they go back and forth with like, oh, I think I'm adding this college. No, I'm going to take off my this college from my FAFSA application. 'Cause I believe on the FAFSA application you're able to add up to like 20 schools or so. I would highly recommend, especially since it takes a long time for it to process, do the FAFSA when you know which college that you're definitely going to, so that when you finish the application, it goes straight ahead, and you don't have to go back and forth with editing your accounts from there. And then also with the FAFSA, it might be hesitant for a lot of families to do it. It's just also having that conversation with your parents to be like, hey, mom and dad, grandma, whoever you live with that is your guardian, to be like, this is the documents I'm going to need to be able to complete this FAFSA. Give them that heads up. Because I get it, parents work, they come late from home, late from work, sorry, and you're all tired, and then you're finally like, hey, I need to find this document, right? Just being on top of it, talk to your parents so that the application process could be smoother. Mhm.
Yes, definitely foreshadowing this and not springing it on anyone at the last moment.
Mhm.
Becky, since you also work with Cato scholars, what are some of the things that you want to see those Cato scholars do so that they can actually fully enroll in the Cato program? What are some of those like little pieces of homework they should do?
I would say the main thing is I really just want them to write down their password. That is like such a huge thing that we run into a lot of the time. I think a lot of students, because once they're in the Cato program, it's a little bit easier, but when we're recruiting them in, what they actually have a lot of trouble with is actually making that FSA ID for not just themselves, but their parents. A lot of people think maybe it's just for the student to do, but the parents also need to, and sometimes both parents need to have an account and have that already confirmed. That way, when you're ready to do your FAFSA, it can all just streamline and everything's put into place. Similar to what Christina said, having all of your documents just ready to go. I mean, they did change it where you can do the IRS retrieval tool, but sometimes you still need to go and look at those actual paperwork. I think it's just about having, like you said, everything prepared with you and making sure you have the right birthday, the right social, the right email. The misspelling of things can change the whole thing, and then it creates the process to be a little bit longer. But yes, and schools I agree with as well. You can also go back and change those at any time. So if you don't get an acceptance, we can go change that, but try to get them on their first thing. That way, as soon as you're accepted, they're ready to give you your financial aid.
And Becky, you mentioned you might have to put both parents. Have you dealt with situations where a student thinks they only have to list mom and then they have that, oh, wait, my mom is remarried and files jointly, and maybe my stepdad doesn't feel like he really is responsible for me? Like, what do you do in a
For sure.
situation like that?
So there is a question on the FAFSA where it does ask if your biological parents are still together or if they're separated. So in a situation where they're separated, they then ask if you are like, does one parent provide more support than the other? The easiest way is to say yes, and then you're only going to provide information for one parent. If it's more of a 50-50 split, they are going to have both parents on there. In a situation I have seen where, the step parent, or if they've remarried, the step parent or whoever is not interested in being on the FAFSA, I have seen it where we kind of just go back and maybe change our answers to the question to put that it's one parent on there. Um, but also, if they're married, both need to be on there, and sometimes there's really nothing that we can do about that, and they need to be on the FAFSA.
So this is why it's important to think before you get married, everybody, right? That's a legal partnership. This is not something to be trifled with, right? And I've had this situation where someone says, "Oh, that's my mom's boyfriend." Oh, but they are actually married. If it's boyfriend, we don't have to worry about it. But if they're actually married, then that's part of that household income and potentially, right? So just some different situations to be aware of. Okay, for our next question, I want to invite Chris and Latoya to take a stab. So we mentioned one challenge is just like getting your parents on board. What are some other challenges that students face when it comes to completing the FAFSA? And then what do you recommend for them to overcome those situations? If you can think of a good example.
Oh, go ahead, Chris. I'll let you go.
Yeah, one interesting thing is remember that the student and the family, for that matter, is going to spend about $20,000 plus, which means that you're in a strong place as a consumer. If you have questions from the financial aid office, if you have questions from one of the agencies that you're working with, is upon you to really flex that power to ask questions. In certain schools that I've worked in, we've actually taught lessons on how to then call those schools and different agencies to get additional assistance. And then finally, I'll say, mind your deadlines. Some of those deadlines that are coming from the federal government, it's not the same thing as turning a paper in late. If you miss those dates, you are in a terrible financial circumstance. So I think that that's something worth considering.
Oh, I love that. We love a deadline. Deadlines rule the adult world. And I also love that you mentioned that the first offer you get from a school isn't always the final offer, and that you have power as a consumer to sometimes push back and say, honestly, this doesn't feel appropriate, or they're missing something about my financial picture or my ability to pay. But it really is on you as the student to speak up and make that case for yourself, right? Latoya, how about other challenges that you've seen students and families face when it comes to FAFSA?
Sure. So I think part of what you covered in your presentation is like having the correct information. Like I've seen students not know, the correct spelling of their name, when they come to filling out those forms, or like their parents' names. Another thing is talking to your parents before we get to senior year about your intention to apply to college. Because again, as Sarah mentioned earlier, your parents put you in a better situation when they complete their taxes annually, right? But most children don't know whether or not their parents file their taxes. And so, having that conversation and understanding that this is a family commitment to for your child to attend college, right? And making sure that your family is on board and going to be supportive by providing that fiscal information annually. I would also say that, for parents, who don't necessarily get their taxes done every year, there are so many free tax preparation services that you can access. I mean, I'm not talking about the predatory ones, right? Like I'm not saying go to H&R Block and, go there and, get a loan on your potential refund. I'm saying that there are community organizations that will support those tax completions. So Temple University hosts some consistently. So please don't let that be a deterrent, wanting the government being all in your business. No, it is for the betterment of your child and their station in life. So that's sort of my pitch and my petition to make sure you're completing your taxes to be in support of their education.
And one thing, I noticed sometimes is that people didn't want to fill out a FAFSA, but they had done taxes. And so if you're a student, all you're telling, like the case you make to your parents is, look, you already told the government this stuff. We're just basically transferring information you gave one agency to a different agency, right? Like if you did your taxes, oh, thank goodness, like you already did it. So all we're doing is securely transferring that information into a portal. And if you're a parent out there and you're like, well, I don't want my child to see what we make in a year. Like growing up in my household, my parents were like, that was not your conversation, Madeline. Like you can see yourself out. Well, guess what? With the new FAFSA, all of that information is censored. The student never sees the parent component unless the parent were to show the student. But really, I think now with the direct transfer, like all it says is like, yay, it worked. You're not even seeing that breakdown of like gross income, etc. So it's a lot more private. All right. I think we have time for our final question. And I'm going to open this up to anyone who wants to go. This all seems like a lot. So, like, really, what makes it worth it? What is that value proposition for a student? Young or old, your 70-year-old, all the way down to, your child geniuses who finished high school at 14 or whatever. Like, what actually makes this worth it?
You said it earlier, right? It unlocks access to so many fiscal opportunities, and so it's the gateway into this college process, right? Like your applications, and then there's a financial piece. This is, as Chris mentioned, this is a business decision that you're making, right? And if you don't walk away, anyone who's here listening, you are a consumer of your college experience, right? So you get to make a choice of where you want to spend your dollars. And this is part of you taking an action step towards making that purchase of your college education, right? And financing it in multiple ways. And so this is not a process that you need to be fearful of. This is a process that, yes, they have definitely watered it down. I was doing pencil and paper. I'm dating myself a little bit, but it was not as automated as it is for you guys now. So you are in a very sweet spot of FAFSA completion now. And so just know that it really is it's imperative for you to do that if college education is part of your journey.
Right.
I think I think it comes off that it's a really long and daunting process, but somebody had said earlier, like they have made it so much easier that it is really quick. And I just think it's worth it in the end. You're not going to know unless you submit it. What if you get all of those financial aid, all those grants, and all those extra scholarships from your school? They're not going to know unless you file your FAFSA. So even for me, I work for a scholarship, but they're not eligible for it until their FAFSA is filed. So it is just so important to just get it done. And there can always be adjustments made if needed along the way. You just have to ask about it.
Thank you for saying that because I think sometimes students get like a paralysis of what if I do it wrong? There's a corrections process. Like we want to do it right the first time. Trust me. We love a nice, clean, beautifully wrapped up in a bow FAFSA. But, oh, I forgot to add CCP to my FAFSA. You can go right back in and pop that on there. I make my students do that because what if you want to take a summer class? What if something falls through? What if someone in your household gets sick, God forbid, and you don't want to go all the way across the country to UCLA anymore and you want to just take some classes while you're figuring stuff out? Pop CCP on there. But you can make some of those adjustments after the first FAFSA has been submitted. Chris, do you want to take us home? Any final reasons why you think FAFSA's just like get it done? It's worth it. It's transformational.
I think that it's helpful as a first step into adulthood. A lot of the conversations that I've had with students is I don't know what taxes are. And even if it doesn't apply to them immediately, they can start to connect the dots to what's going on. Creating a budget for yourself for thinking about how you're going to pay for school is another adult skill that many students haven't had a chance to really flex. But again, back to that dollar amount, it's the first time where they're going to be responsible for it in a meaningful way. I like to make it real for students, so I open up my own FAFSA account and show them what I owe, and having them understand like what it feels like for that to come out of your paycheck every month or whatever, how other teachers and adults around them are thinking about financial aid, and what their experience has been is also something that I think is worth considering as a student.
Such good answers. Well, with that, I'm going to pitch it back to a thank you to our panelists. Hopefully everyone is giving you some virtual applause in their homes or on Scepter, wherever you're tuning in from tonight. Please stick around. We are going to have time. We're getting some good questions. So I'll pitch to Rachel and she'll explain how we get into these breakouts.